who has Iron Fist rules, answers, you are on the plane, you are with this team. You can't hold up the whole team because you and your mom and your posse want to spend an extra night in Cleveland. LeBron responded yesterday. Let's take a listen.
I had nothing but respect for him as a coach, for what he's able to do. Obviously, he was at the helm of one of my favorite player of all time, MJ, and also been there growing up and watching with the Lakers. But I got nothing for him. You know, it just sucks that now at this point, having one of the biggest businesses that you can have, both on and off the floor, having a certified agent in Rich Paul, having a certified business partner in Maverick Carter, that's done so many great business, that the title for young African Americans is the word posse. So it's for me, we see the success that we had, but then there's always someone that lets you know how far we still have to go as African Americans. But it won't stop us from doing what we need to do as a group. I've put together a great team. I've empowered some guys, since I was a kid, and we've all grown together and become one of the, people that try to model after. So we're not going to let Phil Jackson's comments stop us from doing what we need to do. It just gives us extra motivation, and it's just still sad though to see that. And if you go and read the definition of what the word posse is, it's not what I've built over my career. It's not what I stand for. It's not what my family stands for. And I believe the only reason he used that word because he see young African Americans trying to make a difference.
Shannon, what's your reaction to LeBron's comments?
LeBron is 1,000% right, Skip. I'm disappointed in Phil, but I don't know if I'm more disappointed in Phil than I am in Pat Riley. Because why is Pat Riley sharing a story about LeBron James that happened 4 or 5 years ago with Phil Jackson? Phil Jackson does not coach LeBron. LeBron is not on his team. None of LeBron's friends are on his team. Carmelo is on his team. Why would Pat Riley share something like this except to make LeBron look bad? This also reaffirms LeBron's decision. LeBron said, if I had any doubt whether the right thing for me to do was to leave Miami, Pat Riley just confirmed it. See, the problem that Pat Riley and Phil have is that when they coached, Pat Riley in the 80s and early 90s, and Phil in the 80s, late 80s and 90s and 2000s, is that teams control where players went. This is a different era. This is a different time. Players control. They like each other, says, you know what, I want to go play with you. Kevin Durant says, you know what, I want to go play with Steph Curry. See, as long as Pat Riley and Phil Jackson can control the chess pieces, they're fine with them being on the board. But all of a sudden, that dynamic does not exist now. Phil can't help himself but to make comments about other teams and other players on those teams. He's talking about the Golden State Warriors. You can't win a championship shooting jump shots. Why do you care? That's not your team. You don't coach them. You're not the GM. You're not the president, the owner. Why does it bother him so much? Why does he feel he needs to weigh in on every situation that someone doesn't ask him about? Worry about that outdated box that you call a triangle that doesn't work unless you got 4 or maybe the top 10 players that's ever played. I want to read you something from excerpt from Phil Jackson's book in 2004. And this is what he said. And when you hear it, it's up on the screen. In the Cleveland game, I was impressed with LeBron James, who made strides since we played the Cavs during the exhibition season. Yet, as talented as the kid definitely appears to be, I don't believe he or any 19-year-old should be playing in the NBA. These young men grow so dependent on their posses who fetch their cars, their girls, and they can't possibly develop into mature, self-sufficient human beings. One day, I'm convinced we'll find out the true extent of the psychological damage that's being caused. He said this in 2004.
He wrote it.
He wrote it. He said what he said to Jackie McMullen maybe a couple of weeks ago. So in 2004 and 2016, he got to see firsthand, up close and personal, what LeBron became. He also saw quote unquote, his posse. Rich Paul, who is an agent, who's LeBron agent. He also happens to be the agent of Ben Simmons, John Wall, Eric Bledsoe, Tristan Thompson. That's pretty good. Maverick Carter is LeBron's business partner, handle all of his endorsement deals. So, quote, that posse, those hanger-ons, LeBron offered them a hand. He said he met Rich Paul in the airport, had a Warren Moon jersey on. They exchanged information. Hey, he fired his representation, hired Rich Paul, gave Maverick an opportunity. LeBron extended the hand. They reached their hand up, and they pulled themselves up together. LeBron is in a very unique perspective that he was able to do that. So even then, the way he viewed them, they become a successful business manager and a successful agent. And he still views them in the very same light, knowing what they became. If you want to say that, because because the posse is a derogatory term, because you're assuming that everybody that hangs hanger-oners, they offer him nothing. They can provide him with nothing. Even though he wrote this in 2004, here we are in 2016. He knows what LeBron became, a 4-time MVP, a 3-time champion. Skip, I don't think there's any psychological damage done, do you? Okay, those hanger-oners, that posse that he so eloquently stated in 2004, became a very major player, an agent in the NBA. Maverick Carter is LeBron's business manager. They also represent other players. So clearly, that just goes to show, no matter how high you go, no matter what you accomplish, they still see you in that light. I'm not saying Phil Jackson's a racist. I'm just saying how he views people. He views them, because here's the thing. If I view somebody today and they change their entire way, and I still view them that same way 12 years later, I got a preconceived idea of what that person, who that person is. That's the sadness of it. My grandma used to say, son, you got to work twice as hard to get half as far. After all what LeBron has done, after all what he's meant to the NBA, to what Rich Paul has been able to accomplish, what Maverick Carter has been able to accomplish, Phil Jackson sees those young, successful black men in the very same light he saw them in 2004. And it's 12 years later. And that's the saddest part of it.
Okay, several layers here. Let's start with the most obvious one. Did Phil use a racist term to describe LeBron's inner circle?
No, I don't think it's a racist term, because it has a formal meaning, which means that was when the sheriff would round up armed men to go get the bad guys.
Like townspeople,
right?
Like
you say, okay,
citizens.
let's
right?
go get, let's get a posse and go get those. Right,
let's go get the bad guy.
The informal is that you hanging around guys that have characteristics and likes like you, like doctors. Maybe you see 5 or 6 of them. That's a posse. Maybe you see lawyers. That's a posse.
That's one definition of that word.
But he made it clear what he meant by posse. They go fetch their cars. They fetch their girls. So he doesn't view them as equal. He doesn't see them as anything other than hanger-oners, take, provide nothing. 12 years later, we know that's not the case, but that's the way he still views them.
Okay. I started covering the National Basketball Association in 1977 with the Lakers right here in LA. And as the 80s came, the term posse became a very popular locker room term that just meant your crew. Is that a fair, is crew okay? And maybe it was stereotypical, but I never heard a black player through the 80s have any issue with the use of that term. And some players did have what Phil is describing as a posse in a negative way.
Yes.
Sycophants, yes men, hangers-on who just want to hang around. And sometimes, in some cases, they did just fetch the, what did Phil say?
Cars
The cars and the girls.
All right. Maybe that's a little extreme, but TV show was sprung from that called Entourage in the white context, but obviously
it was based on Mark Wahlberg.
It was.
Who travels with.
And you got it. You got it. So anyway, my question to you is, look, I covered Phil in Chicago, and he's now 71 years of age. And even when he was coaching Michael Jordan, even when I was covering the team, I would sometimes be amazed how Phil just lived in his own world, his own, you could call it pseudo-intellectual, but he would term it highly intellectual, above it all world. And sometimes I would be amazed in Chicago that we in the media would bring up some fairly minor locker room issue, and he would be completely unaware of it because he lived in Phil's world. He was the Zen master. So is it possible that Phil sort of picked on the wrong, to use the disparaging term, posse, or the wrong inner circle here, because he may be so out of touch at 71, trying to rebuild what's left of the Knicks, that he has no idea who Maverick Carter is, or Rich Paul is, or Randy Mims is. You see what I mean? Like, he may have no idea how that term could come across and who he's speaking of, because he picked on the wrong inner circle here. And let me echo your point, because I know Maverick Carter a little bit. He is a deal-making dynamo. He is becoming a force in Hollywood and on Madison Avenue. He is LeBron's business partner. And I know Rich Paul a little bit, well enough to know he's becoming a super agent.
Yes.
In not just the NBA, but it's going to become all sports. And their company, as you know, is LRMR. And he is the point man for LRMR. And Randy Mims continues to serve as the chief of staff for LeBron, arranges schedules for him. They grew up together. They came up together. Obviously, LeBron gave them the platform, but then they took the platform to the highest levels. And these are outstanding, upstanding African-American young men who are making big marks in the real world. And so I have nothing but respect for this inner circle of LeBron James.
Correct.
So let's go back to, why did Phil start to talk about what he was talking about to Jackie McMullen? First of all, he volunteers that he was surprised that Pat Riley and Dwayne Wade sort of fell apart and quit communicating with each other. What he's trying to say to Jackie is, do you realize how hard it is today to operate as a general manager in this new NBA world? It's the same mentality that you hear from generation to generation. These kids today, they're just impossible, you know?
Yep.
And it's the equivalent of, I walked uphill to school 5 miles a day, barefooted in the snow,
Yep.
right? You know,
Yep.
that's what he's basically saying. Like, Jackie, do you understand that if Dwayne Wade can fall apart with Pat Riley, who had such a good vibe, as he says, with his players, then he goes into the LeBron stuff. And I don't know that Pat told Phil, because, look, all the stories about LeBron clashing with Pat Riley over his inner circle and how they should be treated or not treated, they're written about constantly by Brian Windhorst at ESPN, by our Chris Broussard, who was at ESPN. We talked constantly on First Take about the clashing. Stephen A. Smith would bring it up, the clashing over the special treatment that LeBron did want his inner circle to be granted. And it became an ongoing issue. It wasn't just over the Thanksgiving Day.
Right.
And that
Seating
was,
arrangements and
yeah, it was always something. And I was torn on it because these guys are really dear to LeBron. These aren't just hangers-on. You know,
Exactly.
These are important people to LeBron. And I never got it straight why LeBron couldn't have negotiated when he took his talents to South Beach. It seems like this would have all been negotiated
Yes.
up front. I need you to take care of my guys
Yes.
because I need them with me on the road or whatever,
Right.
you know, on the plane, whatever. And they constantly battled over this.
Yep.
So Phil is reaching into what he probably read. Maybe somebody told him. Maybe Pat told him. I don't know. You could be right about that. But then Carmelo yesterday is saying, why is Pat Riley in the middle of November here in 2016 talking about what happened in Miami?
See?
It's because he's trying to tell Jackie McMullen, life is tough here. That's why I'm having such a hard time rebuilding these Knicks, because these kids today, they're hard to manage. You know, you have to give them everything. You got to treat their posse special. You know, you got to give them special treatment. That's what he's trying to say to defend himself.
Right.
And the deeper he tried to defend himself, the more he stepped in it, so to speak.
Right.
And the more he offended LeBron and Maverick and Rich and Randy.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so I get it, but I don't. If you 2 days ago, and I could be wrong about this, but if you give me a list of 1,000 people 2 days ago and said rank their potential to be racist, I think I would have put Phil on that list,
Right.
at or near the bottom. I think I would have.
Right.
But as we always talk about, sometimes somebody does something or somebody says something that exposes or reveals their heart.
Let them talk
Okay?
long enough.
Long enough. And so it's possible you are right about this, that he has sort of revealed a deeper part of his heart that indicates the quotes even in the book. I don't think he loves LeBron.
No.
I'm not sure he has that much respect
No.
for LeBron. So that's what came through between the lines to me. Now, whether it goes to racism or unwitting, is it possible it's just unwitting racism where you're just naive to it?
He's 71 years
Yeah.
old, born in the 40s, and the way he views things is the way he views things. But people need to evolve. Their way of thinking needs to evolve. I've evolved my way of thinking because I thought a lot of ways on a lot of different subjects, being from rural South Georgia. But as I got older, and moved out into the world and went to Colorado and Baltimore and been different places, my thinking has changed. My question to you, and you say, well, maybe he doesn't know who Maverick Carter or
It's
Rich
possible.
Paul.
He's just out,
Then why are you
out of
commenting?
touch.
Why are you commenting on it? First of all, why are you commenting on LeBron James, and why are you commenting on the people? Because Phil should know Phil full well. Michael Jordan traveled with a detail all the time. Every road game, he'd have 2 or 3 security guards sitting right behind the bench. How do I know? Because I know Michael a little bit.
Yeah.
He was playing in Denver in '98. I went to touch him, and they almost threw me to the floor.
He traveled with security for sure. I'm not sure you'd say they were hangers-on types.
But I'm just saying.
No, I agree.
Who else had security? Did Tony Kukoc have security?
No.
Did Steve Kerr? Oh, so they made
Steve needed security after some practices, right?
So in other words, they made special accommodations for a star player. See what Phil Jackson and Phil Jackson and Pat Riley's trying to do to make it seem like we treat everybody the exact same. And Skip, you've been covering for 40 years. You know that's not the case. They might treat all their players fair, but we don't treat them all the same. I got a piece from an excerpt from the New York Times that was written about Rich Paul in 2014. He said, LeBron had no obligation to me. I was not entitled to anything. I wanted to be valuable. I didn't want to be a guy that was a hanger-on. I didn't want to just play PlayStation and Xbox with LeBron James. I didn't want to get his car. I didn't want to get to the stereotype. Because, see, that's what he did.
That's stereotype.
See what Phil Jackson's doing, he's stereotyping. He says, if the guy's a player, basketball, or baseball, or whatever, and you don't play basketball, baseball, this is all you can provide. This is the only services that you can provide for this young man.
Yep.
So he said this. He wrote this in his book in 2004. In 2016, he feels the exact same way. Although we've seen the world change so much since just 2004, Skip. But he has these old, outdated, antiquated ideas of what he thinks the NBA should be and how NBA players should act and should behave. And he's so wrong. First of all, he's wrong to comment on LeBron. Hey, you can say, well, look, the way these guys, the way they are today, it's a different era. But he chose LeBron by name. He chose LeBron's posse. They're not a posse. If he shows up with David Falk, is that a posse? If he shows up with somebody from CAA, is that a posse? See, you got to be real careful, Phil Jackson, of how you describe people. Because you did stereotypes. You did. Because in 2004, you felt this what they are, and you're thinking they're the same way now. Although they provide very, very great service, business services for LeBron, you view them as hanger-oners. 12 years later, that's unacceptable. And he needs to give LeBron an apology. Say, I'm sorry that I misspoke. These are major players in the NBA. These are major players in the business world. These hanger-oners. They're not playing Xbox, waiting for LeBron to come home like, hey, dog, what we going to do tonight? That's not who they are. They have their own lives. And for him to marginalize and minimize their importance or worth to LeBron is unacceptable.
He dismissed their importance.
Yes.
That's what he did.
Yes.
Okay, and you asked me, how can he dare to speak like this? Because it seems like he's got a championship ring on every finger, and that's what he thinks of himself. He's on Mount Phil above us all.
Yes.
I know him. I know what he is.
Yes.
So if he were retired, living in Montana or Los Angeles, this would be okay. Nobody would care that much. He's running the New York Knicks.
Thank you.
And from this point on, he's going to sink or swim by how many free agents he can talk into coming to New York City. So after this episode, do you think it's done some damage to his reputation going forward? I would say
he couldn't even
yes.
get a meeting with half the free agents. He couldn't even get a meeting. The big guy that went to Milwaukee from Detroit, Greg Monroe. He turned out less money to go to Milwaukee instead of playing for the great field with 11 rings. Just because you have 11 rings, that doesn't mean you speak correctly all the time.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you do all the right things all the time. I'm going to say he misspoke. He should not have commented on LeBron by name, and he definitely should not have marginalized his business manager, his partners, and everything that he does. LeBron is very, very thoughtful. He's very meticulous in how he is perceived, Skip. You know, he go like Michael was buttoned up. He's always buttoned up. LeBron is very cautious not to send out the wrong vibes because he's worked so hard to get to where he is now with the wife, the 3 kids. He's always trying to do. Yeah, maybe he's misstepped. Maybe there's some things I don't know. But I like the man.
So do I.
I like what he stands for.
Yeah.
I like the way he carries and conducts himself. But Phil Jackson not only did he try to marginalize LeBron James, talking about no 19-year-old. Well, LeBron is about to be 32.
Okay.
And he's been to 7 finals. He has 3 finals and 4 MVPs. So clearly there's no psychological damage done on his behalf.
Just fine.
And those hanger honors that you thought were going to fetch cars and girls and whatever else they get, they became major players in the NBA.
I got it. So after all you've heard, Joy Taylor, would you please chime in on this?
Well, there's, like you said, a lot of layers to it, but I had a completely different perspective from both of you when I heard this. First, I have the utmost respect for LeBron and everything that he does off the court and what he does with the people that are around him. He carries himself like few superstars we've ever seen.
Correct.
He is meticulous, and he does very much care about what's said about him and the narrative around him.
Yes.
And I spent time in Miami when the big 3 were there, and I know about the situation with Pat Riley and LeBron and how Pat Riley likes to run things. And I think we can both agree, or all of us can agree, that Pat Riley and Phil Jackson come from a different era, and they view players differently.
Yes.
And yes, they need to evolve. It's a different era. LeBron is the most powerful player in the league, and he is, in most cases, more powerful than executives.
Yes.
But to me, LeBron has every right to be offended, and he has every right to defend the people around him, as he should. Because you're right, they're not hanging on. They're not fetching cars for him. Right. They're legitimate businessmen who are running his empire.
Right.
And rightfully so, and he's enabled him to do that, and he deserves credit for that. So Phil is wrong there. However, for me, and I don't know what is in Phil Jackson's heart, but to paint this as something that is racist, to me, rings incredibly hollow because we're living in very testing times. There are people who are afraid for their lives. They're afraid to say that they are in the LGBT community. Their women are afraid to walk down the street without being sexually harassed. I would know. There are minorities who are afraid to move in certain neighborhoods and people who are afraid to tell you what religion they are. Right. So this rings incredibly hollow to accuse Phil Jackson of being racist for using the term posse. Dismissive, I'll give you. Out of touch, I'll give you. But racist, to me, LeBron is so powerful of a voice. This leads right into the group of people that think that everything is PC and he can't say anything and he can't have an opinion about anything. And it dismisses the value not the value, but the impact that true racist people who are now enabled and are in this country being racist and being outwardly discriminatory towards people. To say that Phil Jackson meant this in a truly racist way, it rings hollow to me. It was disappointing in the face of what our country is dealing with right now. That was the perspective that I had on it. And that's with all due respect to LeBron and everything that he's done, because I truly do respect everything that he does. He's an excellent role model, and he deserves the respect, and the people around him deserve respect. But I wish that he was more careful about painting this into a racist attack, as opposed to just saying, don't dismiss me and respect me for what I've done and what I've accomplished.
I think he ended it really well. He said it's funny, or I don't know if he used the word funny, but how they view young, successful African-American men, because they're still viewed in some extent in a negative light. Even though what they're doing, they're still viewed as a posse.
But I don't want this to be an attack on LeBron, but to me, it's a pick your battle situation. Is this something that you want to call racist? That you feel like this is a racist attack, or is this an attack on your level of respect, of the level of respect that a man is giving to another man?
Well, I think the thing is for LeBron is that if you're going to talk about me in terms of what I'm doing. He tried to bring up negativity about LeBron wanting to stay in his posse for Thanksgiving. We all know how LeBron is about his family. He was a single parent, and he talks about how his mom struggled and had to work so many jobs to make sure the light stayed on and he could get Christmas or he could have food. So pardon me, Pat Riley, that LeBron would want to spend time on Thanksgiving and sharing that with people he's thankful for.
Well, I don't want to read too much into what the actual story that was told, because we know how telephone works, and maybe that wasn't exactly what happened, and you'd probably get a different story 10 years from now. The players that were on the plane said it didn't happen that way. If we keep it to what, for me, because this is how I absorbed it, both of you obviously absorbed it differently. To me, to call Phil Jackson racist for this, and again, I don't know what's in Phil Jackson's heart, but it didn't feel that way to me. It felt like, I can just see the people getting, just the PC warriors getting angry about someone overreacting to a word.
Just remember the context.
Yes.
LeBron is still, I'm pretty sure, raw from the election results.
Yes.
And his pride was deeply stung because Phil took a shot at his brothers.
Right.
That's where he's.
And what did you say earlier? The bigger the star of the athlete, the more pride they have.
Yes, but it would be disingenuous if Pat Riley say he didn't treat Kareem and Magic differently than he treated Byron Scott or he treated Michael Cooper.
Of course.
So don't make it seem like LeBron is the only star that's in the history of the NBA that wanted preferential treatment.
Of course.
Because that's the way Phil and Pat are framing it. Like he wanted something that he's the same guy. We treat everybody the same. No, you don't.
And I bet if you got Pat Riley down to it, I bet he probably wished he gave him a little more special treatment.
Probably does.
Let me tell you, okay, Christmas, a lot of times Christmas would fall on a Wednesday or a Thursday or Friday. We'd have to work. And so we would all vote when you want to come in later or that afternoon. Now, we know we voting. Everybody, we got 53 guys voting, but only one vote matters. Number 7.
Right.
You want your kids to get up early and open presents, or they're going to wait till you get done? So whatever he decided, that's when we were coming into work. If he wanted to get up and open presents with his kids, guess what? We were coming in at noon. Yeah. If he didn't, we were coming in early. So we know how this thing works.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to leave it there. Coming up, what do Skip and Shannon think of the trash talk between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather? They'll debate that next.